We are 22S Radio, the next wave of K-Beats. 22S Radio is 22smedia.com and 88.1 FM KKJZ HD3 Long Beach, Los Angeles. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Golden Spotlight. Yes, this is the show where every week I bring you a new guest and we get to hear their story. At this time, I'd like my guest to please introduce himself.
Hey Rob, my name is Andy Hoang, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Cal State Long Beach, and I've been here about 5 years now.
Great. So the first thing I like to do is I like you to start off from the beginning. What was life growing up?
It wasn't like most childhoods. I actually was born in Vietnam, so I was born in 1975. And during this time, this was during the Vietnam War, right? If you recall, and I was born in March, and right around that time was when the U.S. government decided they were going to pull out of Vietnam and just kind of end the conflict or end the war. And so at that time, my mom had just given birth to me, and it was a pretty chaotic time. I don't recall because I was a baby, but I can only imagine for my mom at that age, not knowing what was going to happen next. Her country that she had grown up in was in a war, and then what was now going to fall to the communists, right? And so when I was born in Vietnam, about a month after I was born, we had to escape. And so fortunately, we were able to get on a helicopter and make our way back to the United States. And we spent some time at several refugee camps. I know the first one we spent, the first camp we spent was at Arkansas. We spent some time in the Arkansas refugee camp, and then we made our way west, and actually spent some significant time at Camp Pendleton, at the refugee camp there. And so after spending some time at the refugee camp at Camp Pendleton, we made Orange County our home. And so growing up, being a migrant, my family, my parents, being new to the country, not really speaking English, it made for a difficult childhood because you were learning how to speak two languages in the house, right? You were learning how to speak English, you're learning how to speak Vietnamese. And then I just remember growing up as a child, my parents really wanted me to learn English first in the home. And they didn't want me to go to school feeling like I was out of place or left behind. And so actually you would think Vietnamese would be my first language in the house, but it was actually English. And so it was hard, if you can imagine, right? Parents who barely spoke English trying to teach their child English first, right? So my kindergarten years, my elementary school years, I would say was really difficult. I always felt like I was always 2 steps behind, trying to keep up with the other kids, and so yeah, it was tough.
And what was high school like? Were you involved in any activities, any sports, clubs?
So luckily for me, I found my outlet through sports, and so baseball was just something that came natural to me, and so. As much as I struggled with school, I always found my peace or my solace on the baseball field. And baseball was something that I loved, I excelled at, and it was where I just felt like I understood English, like I understood the common language, and I found that commonness through the sport. And so I would just say, through elementary school, as much as I struggled with the English language, sports was really a vehicle to help bridge that gap for me. And then once I got to high school, it wasn't quite the same challenge. I think the challenges that I faced in high school were typical of any teenager, right? Growing up in Orange County, finding your identity, finding your cultural identity. But baseball really helped bridge that gap. It helped me, introduce me to a whole new circle of friends that made high school not as challenging as it could have.
Now, most would say that senior year was the most stressful. What was senior year like for you?
Senior year was pretty stressful because of academically, I wasn't. I didn't take it as serious. My focus, my priorities was was really on baseball at the time. And I recall my senior year being my catch-up year, right, where I really had to focus and bring my GPA up and get more serious about my academics, because I knew that if I wanted to go far, if I wanted to go somewhere, academics was going to be my ticket, and that baseball and athletics was fun, right? It was it was a way to just teach you about life character, values, work ethic, but it was really academics that was really going to get me to where I wanted to go. So I recall my senior year just catching up, doing double the work academically, trying as hard as I could to get my GPA up, and yeah, that was my senior year. It really revolved around just playing catch up.
When senior year wraps up, everybody asks themselves the question, what's next? What's after high school? Did you know right away what was next? What major, what college you wanted to go to?
So I'm a first generation college student. I was the first in my family to ever go to college. And I would say I struggled. You know, I actually had to go to a community college for a couple years. And I think during that time, it was even more challenging, because when you're at a community college, you really feel like you're on your own. It's a sea of people, and everyone kind of has their jobs, and they're going to their jobs, and they come back to school at night, and they're trying to figure it out. And being fresh out of high school, you kind of feel alone, and it's challenging. It's really daunting. So I think, you know, in that time when I was at community college, I realized, you know, I really like telling stories. So I discovered my love for telling stories. How would I go about that? Being in broadcast news piqued my interest. We grew up, you know, as a first generation immigrant family. We used to watch the news a lot. And the reason why we watched the news a lot was, well, we wanted to improve our English. And so, you know, the TV was our teacher. And so we would watch a lot of local broadcast news, you know, KNBC4, KTLA, KABC. And so, you know, I had an affinity for storytelling and watching broadcast news. And so in community college, at Santa Ana College actually is where I went, I thought, you know what, I want to learn the art of storytelling via broadcast. So I joined the media class, the TV class, and was the anchor, was the sports anchor, was the news anchor. I wrote my stories and did the local broadcast for Santa Ana TV.
Nice. So at that moment, would you say you were always like able to do public speaking? Was there a time that you were shy? How did you go about doing that?
I would say that I'm constantly shy and nervous doing public speaking. I think there's a reason why public speaking is one of America's most feared actions, right? Like I think people are probably would be more apt to run into a burning building to say somebody than get up in front of an audience and do public speaking. So I still have that fear. I still have that nervousness of doing public speaking. But working in broadcast news, you really perfect the craft of storytelling. And so during that time, you know, I learned the basics of how to tell a story.
And you know, some students, they either go to class or go straight home. But did you have the opportunity to partake in clubs and stuff also during college?
So after 2 years of community college, I transferred to Cal State Fullerton, right? I transferred to Cal State Fullerton, and I think like most of our students here at Long Beach, 56% of our students are actually first generation, and I think most of our students have more than one job, or at least a job. And so when I was a student, I was on the hustle, right? I had 2 jobs. I had an internship at KNBC4 with Fred Rogan. I worked at Nordstrom's, you know, selling clothes, selling shoes, and then I also did my TV class for Santa Ana TV. So I worked a lot. It just seemed like it was a blur. I didn't really have a chance to join clubs or really enjoy the moment or enjoy the experience or take advantage of the university itself. because I was just always on the hustle, trying to get to the next thing, right? Like trying to finish the next project, and then finish the next project for my internship class, or showing up to work and making sure I'm doing my best at work, and then going home and making sure I'm doing the best at home. So no, I didn't have a chance to do that. But it's a catch-22, because I also feel like that's what makes our students and students from the Cal State system so successful after they graduate, because they know how to hustle, they know how to work hard, they know how to grind, and they know how to get stuff done.
So what was that internship like?
Oh, Fred Rogan was awesome, right? Yeah, I spent some time with Fred Rogan, and he really taught me how to tell a story in 10 seconds. And you know, he basically has like a 3-minute segment, right, for sports every night, and he's got to tell all of the highlights, all of the games, getting the Lakers, getting the Kings, getting the Dodgers within 3 minutes. And so it was pretty eye-opening to see him work on a fly like that. He taught me that being comfortable with who you are, being a personality first is really important. And then obviously understanding the craft of storytelling and being able to tell that story through a camera was important, because you want to be able to connect with viewers. I learned a lot from him and his producer Kevin at the time. But you know, it was that experience that actually, like, that it solidified it for me. It told me, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to go into broadcast journalism. So after Cal State Fullerton, I packed up my little car, my little Honda, and I drove all the way across the country. I drove to Georgia and took my first TV job as a news producer for a CBS station in Macon, Georgia, called 13 WMAZ, and that was my first start in TV news.
Nice. What was that like?
The time in Georgia was definitely different, right? It was, I mean, all I knew was Orange County. I grew up in Anaheim, so that's all I knew. So imagine, you know, driving all the way across the country to Georgia, in a town called Macon, Georgia, where you know, the size is really small. I think the market was like 123, size market 123 out of 220 some TV stations in the country. I would say that it was necessary. It definitely put me on the path of success in terms of where I'm at today. And I think the most valuable lesson I learned out of that time in Georgia was that you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it was so uncomfortable to the point where it's like, okay, I don't think I can do this anymore. I think I want to quit. And then you're reminded by the fact, well, wait a minute, you left a war-torn country, right? Your parents sacrificed everything, came over to the country, didn't know English. You learned English by watching local news, right? You paid your way through school, working 2-3 jobs. You know, so it's just like the experience was be okay with being uncomfortable, sacrifice, work hard, and the rest will follow.
What was your parents' reactions to your career choice?
I think, like most traditional Asian families, they weren't very excited, right? They wanted me to probably go into law, or some type of science, or medicine, or computers, and I'm not wired that way. I've always been wired as a creative, as a storyteller, and so I'm just, yeah. I mean, I remember there were a lot of hard conversations. A lot of trust, you know, me telling my parents, just trust me, I got this, you know, just let me fail on my own, let me experience, let me figure it out. And I think as parents, it's probably hard to hear, you know, you have to kind of let go and let your kids live their life, right, and figure out their own journey, and be there for them when they need you. But for the most part, yeah, it was, they trusted, and they let me go.
And what happened after Georgia?
So after Georgia, Georgia was a great experience in terms of, you know, learning how to be comfortable with very uncomfortable circumstances, but people were very friendly. I learned how a top-notch TV station worked, because that was the top station back then. And so after Georgia, I got a job as a news producer at the Orange County News Channel, which was the local TV station under the Orange County Register. And so I went back home. I missed the sunshine too much, so I came back home, and I produced at Orange County News Channel for a little bit, and that was great. And so after doing that for about a year and a half, I wanted to continue to grow. I do believe that you don't want to stay the same. You want to get better. You don't want to get worse. So you want to keep pushing and evolving. So after about a year and a half at Orange County News Channel, I realized, you know what, I want to go to a bigger market. And so I looked on the map. Well, where is it close enough to home? That's a big enough market where I could learn and grow and get better, but still be close enough to drive home and visit my family. And that was San Diego. And so luckily, I sent in my resume tape, and applied to the ABC TV station down there in San Diego, and they hired me. And I think I was only 25 at the time, so I was at that time definitely one of the younger producers hired in that area, in that market. But now they hire them right out of school or as interns. But for me, that was a big deal to be 25 and have a producing job at a big market like San Diego.
And for those that aren't aware of what the producer does, tell us about your duties you had.
Oh, the producer is really exciting, right? The producer is kind of like the conductor of the symphony. You have to pull together the music notes. You have to lay out the music. You have to organize the music. You have to put in order how you want the concert to go. What songs go first? What songs go second? And then once you organize the show, once you put together the music, now you have to direct the ensemble. You have to direct the anchor. You have to direct the weather guy. You have to direct the reporter. You have to make sure that your blocks, your segments are coming out on time to hit your commercial. Sometimes there might be breaking news. You might get a phone call from the news desk where, hey, we have a breaking news story. There's a car chase. We're going to send the helicopter up. We'll have a live shot in 5 minutes. So then you have to plan for that 5 minutes in the middle of the show while everything else is going on. So it's managing chaos, right? But while also telling the story in a creative, in a quick and captivating and a dynamic way. And so that's kind of the role of the news producer. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of adrenaline that comes with it. It allows you to be really creative, and you get to work with talented people, from news anchors to sports people to weather people to your camera operators to your reporters out in the field. So being a news producer, you kind of have to be able to be a jack of all trades.
And what happened after that?
So after about 7 to 8 years in broadcast news, I had this epiphany where it's like, okay, I can do more, right? I don't want to stay the same. I feel like I've done all I can in broadcast news as a producer. What else can I do? I know that I can be more creative. I know that I like to have big vision. I like to have vision and then come up with strategies to implement a vision. I like to lead teams. I like to bring people together. I like to inspire people. And so I thought, you know what, I want to leave TV news and I want to go into corporate communications. I want to go into media relations. I want to go into public relations. Because that's what my degree was in originally at Cal State Fullerton. I majored in communications with an emphasis in PR. And so I left broadcast news and I went into media relations, public relations. And I did that for, immediately when I left, I went straight to a hospital. And I worked for a big health system down in San Diego called Palomar Health. And I did all of their PR and their media relations.
And what was that transition like?
You think it would be easy, right? Going from broadcast news, creating stories, producing stories, managing, conducting the symphony of news people. Like, okay, it can't get harder than that. But I would say that the transition from the newsroom to the corporate room was very difficult. It probably took about 3 to 4 years in terms of a steep learning curve, learning how to work within a corporate environment, knowing that you have so many different people that you're accountable to, the CEO, the board of directors, doctors, nurses, the community. It was hard. It was really, really hard. And I think that's why I enjoyed it so much, because it pushed me, right? It pushed me to grow beyond my comfort zone, something that I didn't learn any of that stuff in school. You didn't learn that in broadcast news. And so the transition was hard, but I enjoyed it. It opened my mind. It delivered everything that I was asking for in terms of having the opportunity to create big vision, right? And then to critically think and come up with strategies to support a vision. and then to pull people together and to be held accountable at the highest level. Those are things I thrive on.
And what happened after?
So after working at the health system for about 7-8 years, I was fortunate because not only did I do PR, media relations, but I did a lot of marketing campaigns there. You know, we did a lot of cool stuff there. Like, for example, we built the first, we built a TV studio in our marketing shop because we wanted to create our own health news. You know, and that was at a time when other hospitals weren't doing. And so we created, because of my TV background, we were able to do that. Like, that's cool stuff. And so after, 8 years or so at the health system, a recruiter reached out to me. And this person has seen my work in the local San Diego market. And this person was representing this place called the Salk Institute. And the Salk Institute is a place founded by Jonas Salk. He's the pioneer of the vaccine for polio. And he created the cure for polio. So he built this world-renowned science institute where they have some of the world's brightest minds conducting research on Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cancer, how plants grow. And so they recruited me to come and do marketing for them, to do media relations, and then also help do marketing and branding, because they were getting ready to raise a $300 million capital campaign. And they needed somebody to come in to tell the story of science, to make it relatable, to make it exciting, to make it captivating, to make it urgent, to make it my Sally, my next door neighbor, why she should care about Salk Institute research. They should care because these types of discoveries leads to drugs that could ultimately save their life one day. And so I was recruited to do marketing, branding, and media relations for the Salk. And that was talk about being out of your comfort zone. It was like Georgia. It was like Georgia, but instead of the geographical discomfort, it was this sense of fear of not knowing, because I didn't know science. I didn't have a science background, and here they were asking me to come in to work with Nobel Prize winners, and break down their work and their science and market it and tell stories around discoveries that are important and that should make people care. And so that was an amazing time. Worked with some incredible scientists. It was an environment where we all felt like we were moving towards something greater, and that innovation, that curiosity, the ability to be limitless. That there was no question that shouldn't be touched. And so that was an incredible time. We did some amazing work, raised over $300 million. The Salk Institute's brand, I guess their profile, just significantly increased, not just regionally, but globally. And so that was a great time.
And what happened after that?
So after the Salk Institute, I had an opportunity to come to Cal State Long Beach. A recruiter reached out to me about this awesome opportunity to lead a marketing team here. And the pitch was, Long Beach is a great place, right? It's one of the leaders in the CSU, and it's a great story. We have great students. We're in a great location. I've got family members who've graduated from here, and I've been to this campus many times as a child, and it was an opportunity to take communications and create something magical. Create something that matches, that's indicative of what students experience every day, right? And create this identity and elevate the academic and the research and all the stuff that's going on here, and tell it to the masses, tell it to the world, to help increase fundraising, right? To help increase the prestige and the value of your degree, to enhance the website and how we're perceived from the outside looking in. And bringing a campus closely together, working with departments like athletics, right, helping elevate their brand. And so it's been exciting. It's been exciting. This is one of the most exciting campuses within the CSU.
What strategies did you use? Obviously midterms and finals would be considered some of the most stressful times in the student's life. What did you use? What strategies did you use to succeed in that?
For in terms of preparing and studying, I don't think I have good advice, because I was a procrastinator. Right? I'd wait till the last minute and would just pour over hundreds of flashcards flashcards helped, right? Flashcards were a big deal for me. I remember when I took a common law course, and I remember the professor saying only 3 or 5 people will get A's out of a class, out of a lecture hall of like over 100 people. And as soon as he said that, I said, I'm going to be one of those kids. And I lived and died by those flashcards. So in terms of midterms and stuff, flashcards, study, wait till the last minute. Because for me, I had to wait till the last minute. If I studied so far in advance, I'd probably forget the material come day of. So for me, I would, this is bad advice, but I would wait.
Tell us about the importance in the work field of being bilingual.
Well, for me, that's a good question, because people don't usually ask that. For me, it's important from the standpoint that it gives you a deeper understanding of what maybe that person may be feeling, right? Not necessarily understanding it from a surface level of how they're interpreting something, but just how they're experiencing empathy, I think. Empathy is the biggest thing, I think, when you're bilingual, because you can empathize that that person can completely feel like they're in a foreign land, right? Because of a language barrier, and having been there before, like we just started off this conversation, what was it like being in elementary school? It was like being in a foreign land. You feel like you're constantly playing catch up, and if people don't understand that, you feel like you're being left behind intentionally, and it doesn't feel good, right? And so I would say the biggest thing is empathy.
Tell us about the importance of mentors, and did you have mentors growing up?
Yeah, I know for certain that I wouldn't be where I'm at today without specific mentors in my life. And so the classes that I've spoken to or presented to, or students that I've engaged with, if anyone approaches me and say, hey, do you have like 5 minutes for coffee, or hey, can I check in with you, or can you share with me about your life story? I would say 10 times out of 10 I always say yes, and I do that intentionally, because I know that there's no way I would be here unless someone had given me that same opportunity. But I will tell you at the same time, I remember the people that who have also said no to me, right? Who've said, no, I don't have time for you. And I also use that as fire. I use that as motivation. Okay, that's too bad. I understand people are busy, and that person didn't make time. But I also use that as motivation to work even harder, and also to remind myself, if I'm ever in a position, or not in a position, or just in a position to help somebody, to make that time. It takes 5 minutes, right? It takes 3 minutes. It could be half an hour. It could be an hour. But you just never know how that could drastically change someone's course in terms of their journey and what they're trying to navigate and where they're trying to go. And I think that's one of my favorite things about working here at Long Beach, is to be able to have an influence on students.
One of the questions I always ask my guests is, where do you see yourself after retirement?
I don't think I'll fully ever retire. I feel like I'll always be hustling, right? I'll always be hustling, I'll always be on the grind. But when it's all said and done, I think you would see me giving back still, right? Whether it be coaching baseball, or meeting with students, or consulting, or volunteering, or creating that vision and creating strategies, and helping teams, help build teams, and help companies or organizations solve problems. I think that's what you'll see me do.
I always ask my guests, what would you like your legacy to be?
I think my legacy, I would want it to be that he gave his heart and soul to make the place better. He gave his heart and soul to leave it better than how he found it, and that he inspired people, whether indifferent or not, to get the best out of them, and to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that there's more than one perspective, and with many perspectives come great ideas.
I always like to think that, anybody could be listening from around the world, and it could be that there's a particular audience member that wants the same career, that wants the same degree that my particular guest has of their story. What tips do you have for people that want to follow in your footsteps?
That's a good question. Because if you told me this 10 years ago that I'd be doing this, I would have been no way, you know, because there wasn't like a blueprint, there wasn't like an instruction book that said, hey, here it is, here's the roadmap, follow it. But what I did do was that I took risks, and I was comfortable being uncomfortable. Right, I took risks. I was bold in the certain decisions I made, and I didn't look back. You know, and whether a decision failed or whether a decision was the right decision, there was always valuable lessons to be learned in all of those decisions and those experiences that I went through. And so when I connect with students, I tell them, don't be afraid to take risks. You know, if you're passionate about something, go after it and try it, because you have time, right? And so I would say take risks and be okay with being uncomfortable.
Ways that people can, you know, raise their chances of getting hired. You know, the idea that, you know, your image is everything, even online and stuff.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So like tips for, like, let's say the importance of like LinkedIn and stuff that will help you be more marketable.
Yeah, that's important. I think every student should have a LinkedIn profile, right? And they should have a professional headshot. But to go back a step further, before you even get to your LinkedIn page, it has to do with your activities. Right? You can have a beautiful LinkedIn page, but if you have nothing to put on it, it's just a pretty page. So you really need to be on the hustle, right? Whether it's being engaged at school, with clubs, or your internships, or volunteer projects outside of school, in your community. Like those types of projects, those types of activities look really strong on a resume or on a LinkedIn page. And so I would encourage students to be as busy, be active as possible in pursuing their passions. And those passions will translate to their resume and make them stand out more when they're competing for jobs.
So for those that aren't familiar with like the difference between PR and marketing, tell us about, you know, the difference between the fields.
Yeah, so public relations, you know, is strategic communications, working with press, right? Strategic placement of certain communications. There's internal, the external PR, managing certain crises, right? That's really public relations and media relations. In marketing, you know, they're kind of blurring the lines where marketing, where you're creating your own content, right? You're creating stories, you're packaging them, you're using, you know, multimedia, you're using digital, you're using apps, video, photography, graphic design, social media. And you're creating content to help tell a story. So yeah, that's the difference.
And what would you say is another, why is it important for students to get involved on their campus?
Yeah, my one regret is not being in the moment, feeling like I was immersed in the journey, and I think if I would have learned more, right? I would have made more connections with my peers, and making more connections with peers means you learn more from others, and when you learn more from others, it expands your perspective, and when you expand your perspective, then it brings great ideas and great creativity. That's why I think it's important to be more connected to your university while you're here.
And so, what tips do you have for people if I know that, you know, we were told, you know, especially in broadcasting and stuff, that it's important to build up your portfolio. Tell us about portfolios.
Well, it depends. Like, so if you're going to broadcast news and you want to be a reporter or an anchor, you should be out practicing stand-ups, right? You should be doing stand-ups. You should be putting together video packages. You should have some pieces of you on the anchor desk and doing some set pieces where you're pitching the stories, where you're tossing the stories, and you want to be able to package stories and put them on a video reel to show the potential news director that you can tell a story. and that basically highlights and showcases your work. And so that's really important. If you're in radio, then obviously you want a radio reel.
And how about also like, for someone that wants to become a blogger?
Yeah, so if someone wants to be a blogger, I think, you know, it's important to take risks and go out and create your own blog, right? And write your own content, write content that you're passionate about. That's what's so exciting right now with marketing and PR, because there is no limit. You can go out there and create your own content with your iPhone. You can go out there and create your own content with your iPhone in terms of shooting video, shooting photography. You can even do graphic design from your iPad or your iPhone. And then the words. The words, to me, are the most important, though. You can create content, but it really starts with the word. And so really working on your writing skills is important, because I believe whether it be PR, media relations, or marketing, everything starts with the written word.
And so I always like to also, you know, have my guests talk about the value of volunteering. I know that, you know, sometimes some of us may have family members that are, you know, that are too old school, and, you know, they don't understand the value of volunteering. They think, oh, like, why are you just volunteering, you know, doing stuff and you're not even getting paid?
So your question is?
So tell us, you know, why, you know, volunteering is important and that it does play a factor in, like, resumes.
Well, I volunteer because I like to volunteer, because it feels good, right? It feels good to give more than to receive. But I have certain passions. Like I love baseball, so I volunteer by coaching baseball. That's my way of giving back to the community. I think it's important because, you know, as employers, you know, when they're looking to hire people, they're looking for candidates beyond what's on the resume. They want to hire a person, right? And what is this person passionate about? What do they care about the most? What interests do they care about? Do they care about their community? And if they volunteer, what are they into? Why are they into making the community better? Those are things that help prospective candidates stand out more. That's why I think it's important that our students and prospective students who who are looking to apply to a university or apply for a job, that they do fill out their experience so that it's well-rounded, that it's not just work projects, that it's also volunteerism and giving back and making their community better.
Tips to be successful in a job interview.
Tips to be successful in a job interview? Well, be prepared, right? Study the company, know the role that you're applying for, understand the values that you bring, the talent and the skills, make sure that they match the role of the job, and then specifically share examples of how you solved a problem, or how you created a solution, or how you created a vision, and show tangible success, like quantify how you were able to improve a certain situation from A to B.
For those that aren't familiar with, like, you know, these processes that people talk about, like a cover letter, a thank you letter, and all that type of stuff.
What was the question?
Oh, so like, you know how like there's also like, cover letters and like thanking, you know,
Yes.
the person after and all that type of stuff.
So your question to me is?
Oh, like the importance of like cover letters and like recommendation letters and stuff like that.
I think it's important to have a cover letter, because it shows the recruiter something much deeper about you than what's on a resume. And the cover letter should be really personable, and it should stand out, and it should be short, concise, and really highlight how your talent, your skills, and your value matches the job, and what you can do to help improve the company. Okay, and in terms of follow-up, thank you. I think nowadays, depending on how many people are on the panel, because you know sometimes you'll interview with 20 people. You can't send out 20 cards, but 20 emails is doable. So even in that particular case, in a circumstance like that, like an email, follow-up thank you emails are helpful too.
tell us about, rejection. Did you have any experiences where or tips for people if, they got rejected by the job, that they shouldn't be discouraged and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, competing for jobs and then winning the job is actually really hard because you're competing against a lot of people, and not only that, but so many times you may not have gotten the job not because of your lack of skill, but because just it wasn't the right cultural fit, right? Maybe the company wasn't the right fit for you, or vice versa. And so for me, the times when I've been turned down for a job, it just makes me hungrier. It just makes me reflect. Number one is you got to reflect and think about, like, how did I interview? Did I answer that right, or did I come off in a way that wasn't appropriate? So reflect and think back how you can improve on your interviewing skills. And then number two, just get hungrier, work harder. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise. Maybe that job that you really wanted wasn't the right fit to begin with.
What about people that, I guess, I don't know if the term is they want to get famous, but I remember I interviewed one person he's a rapper, and he mentioned the importance of having consistency. All your social media handles all the same name, and how to get your name out there, and when you want to get noticed and get big.
Well, I think it depends on what profession or what area you're trying to go. If you're
Entertainment.
Yeah, that would make sense, right? You want a consistent brand, you want a consistent name, and consistent content in terms of what between the different profiles that you're promoting. But it really depends, right? So like in that area, I think like social media influencers, that's an actual career now, where people are social media influencers and they get paid to post on behalf of other companies. Actually, companies pay influencers a lot of money to do that. That's marketing, to help get their product out there, help get their organization out there. And so in that regard, I would say, yeah, that's accurate.
Going back to when you mentioned about going to Georgia, I know that when taking broadcasting, my broadcasting teacher, he did say, and mainly like all the broadcasting teachers and any media related ones, they mentioned how there's always going to be that chance that we're going to have to go outside of the state and go to like a really small city, and just to get the hands-on experience, to get that media background, to get that spot on your resume to show that you have that media experience. Tell us about that experience, that decision you made to have to go out of state just to try to get that media background. Were you homesick? What was your mindset back then?
So I was told the same thing. If you want to start in TV news, you gotta go to a small market. You gotta leave California and go to a really small market. And I had a choice to go to Palm Springs, right, or Arizona, and I landed at Georgia, and it was terrifying. We kind of glossed over it, like, yeah, it taught me how to be okay with being uncomfortable, but I'm telling you, like, if it wasn't for that hardship, I wouldn't be where I'm at, and because it was terrifying. And what it made me realize is that if I can get through that, if I can learn through that, excel through that, then there's nothing I couldn't handle. And so that time was really hard, but it taught me, how to tell a story. It taught me how to stay focused and still try to get the best out of my abilities, even though I was in this complete chaos of an environment. And that's what broadcast news was. You got to be able to work under chaos and under control, even though things are burning all around you. And so that time was really hard. It was scared. It was I think I literally cried every single day driving across the country. And I think the only day I didn't cry was the last day when I was in Tennessee. I looked on the map and I realized Tennessee is just too far from California. There's no point in crying. There's no way I'm going to drive back. It's just too far. And so, but it was a great experience. And so if you're wanting to pursue a career in broadcast TV or radio, you're gonna have to move. You're gonna have to try to go to another market, go to a small market and make mistakes, because that's where you learn. You don't learn by just being perfect. And so, but nowadays too, you could actually create your own podcast from your house or from the studio, and keep doing podcasts, and getting critique, getting feedback, and getting better. But I do believe that going and leaving to a small market, it's not just the work that you're learning from; it's the entire experience, right? Of getting into the car and moving away from home, working with people who are not from your culture, right? Learning empathy, and learning how to stay focused in the midst of chaos.
It's pretty cool that you were able to work with even the medical field with your background with media training and stuff. I know that I've interviewed law enforcement before, and they mentioned that the police they have degrees in a variety of emphases. But let's say, because so in my time in community college, I took radio television. That was mainly my whole interest. And then they had cut the degree and they changed it to media studies. So at the time I ended up having to get journalism classes. And then it's very interesting because the past two guests that I interviewed in the past recently turned out they learned late in life also that they had learning disabilities. I can't do math. I couldn't reach the stats. So I got here through special admissions, and I was able to I finished everything else, met all the other requirements, and journalism was the right fit for me when they put me here. But what tips do you have if a person wants to somehow get to the movie industry as well, acting and stuff, tie in their journalism, radio, TV background with all they've had is the behind the scenes type of
I don't think I could
especially
that.
PR in the movie industry and stuff, if they want to get their foot in the door in PR in the movie business and TV business.
I don't know, because I don't have much experience on the entertainment side, movie side. So yeah, I don't know in terms of acting and getting into the film side. Entertainment PR though, I recall a time when I actually interviewed with a big agency called Bragman, Nyman, Caffarelli. It might still be around, and it was my senior year, and I was just trying to figure out what was I going to do, and it was an internship. It was an internship for this big Hollywood agency, and I didn't get it, and goes back to that last answer. I was disappointed, but it all worked out. I probably wasn't meant for Hollywood. But I think that's how you'd probably you would get your start. You would have to try to find internships in the industry that you're passionate about. So if it's in film, try to get an internship in Hollywood. Yeah.
What tips do you have for the people that they're still changing their mind, they're still figuring out what they want to do in life? They're in college now, they keep changing their major a couple times.
Yeah, that was me. I think I started off with computer science, so I was supposed to do that. That didn't work out. Maybe I have a learning disability because I'm pretty bad with math, and I settled on communications. And then under communications, I majored with an emphasis in PR, but I got my AA in journalism. And I'm so glad I did that because writing, again, is really the foundation. It is the foundation of communications, whether it be PR, marketing, broadcasting. If you can write, you will have a job. And so back to your question, my advice would be understand what you're passionate about and what you're good at. If you're passionate about storytelling and you're good at it, focus on that, and then things will blossom from that. So I had no idea I'd be doing what I'm doing now. I just knew that I can create stories, I can tell stories, and I like it, and it's fun. And so from there, I kept at it. 8 years in TV news. Okay, it's time for something else. Okay, let's go into PR. More storytelling, right? More storytelling, more perfecting it. But now I get to do it in a different environment. It's in a hospital setting. But now I have a graphic designer. I got a web developer. I get to work with doctors, nurses, but I'm still, at the end of the day, it's still going back to storytelling. And now I went from healthcare to science, but it's still storytelling. So, point is, find out what you're really strong at and what you enjoy doing, and hopefully whatever you're strong at, you like doing it, and you can focus on developing that. Hopefully, that'll lead to something greater.
Tell us about, I had, met you through the presentation you gave. You had mentioned, how the campus went through name changes. It's, had, the image has grown. The campus has gotten more popular, and the logo, the sports teams, all that.
Oh yeah, so that presentation was just to give an overview, a nice history of how the school started, right, the beginning of the university, what it's gone through, and then where it's at today, and how we've grown so much, right? We're now probably one of the top 5 most applied to universities in the entire country. It'd be one thing if we're like a private university, but we're part of the CSU, and that is tremendous, right? That's tremendous value. That's tremendous value in perception, in prestige, and value and identity into what our students are receiving here. I think when I presented to your group of students, I think one of the students raised her hand and said, I feel so lucky to have been accepted. Because it's hard to get in now, right? And that's what it does. It changes the value and the perception of the degree. And so what I presented on was, we've had these different names and these different identities, and it's time that the university, come together as one, right? And really distinguish ourselves within the CSU, not distance, but distinguish ourselves, and then really come together as one campus. And so that's what we talked about. It's exciting because we have, the no barriers messaging, right? No barriers to success, no barriers to the top. And so you'll see like certain campaigns that we'll be doing, we've done on social media to highlight no barriers, helping students like you achieve their dreams, acknowledging that we do have barriers here on campus. I experience barriers every day here coming to work, but we acknowledge that, but we also were committed, we're so student-centric to eliminating barriers to help you guys achieve your dreams.
How can our audience contact you?
Oh, my email is easy, right? andy.hoang@csulb.edu.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here on the Golden Spotlight.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me here.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this episode of the Golden Spotlight. Remember, you can watch, if you tuned in late, you can watch the video version on my blog, robfloresmedia.wordpress.com. Until next time, folks.